И сегодня мой гость – израильский юрист, профессиональный бухгалтер и налоговый эксперт, который предоставляет налоговые консультации, услуги по налоговому планированию и налоговому структурированию частным лицам, компаниям и трастам. Многое работает с репатриантами, с людьми, которые переехали в Израиль. Зовут моего гостя Ариэл Кац. Ариэл имеет 12-летний опыт работы в сфере налогообложения и сейчас является главой Тель-Авивского офиса фирмы. Меня зовут Тимур Мазаев, я автор проекта о том, как управлять деньгами и инвестициями, автором проекта moneypapa.ru. Hi, Ariel. Thanks for coming to my show. I really appreciate that. I have a lot of questions today because I want our video to be the best on YouTube for Russian repatriates in Israel. So shall we start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Timur. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks for coming. So, Ariel, who are Israeli tax residents and who are repatriates?
Right. So basically in Israel, we look on an Israeli tax resident as someone which his center of life is in Israel. Center of life is the main test. What is the center of life? The place where you live, where you have a home, where your family lives, when you have the source of your income, etc. However, since this test is quite broad and it's quite hard to tell, for example, I have clients which they live in Russia, but their wife is living in Israel, and they have home here and home there. And they visit Israel part of the time, and they have rental income from Russia, but business income from Israel. So it's quite a problematic test, quite a broad test. And therefore, in Israel, we also have two guidelines, let's call it that way, two more simple tests, which are counting days tests. The first is that we're looking about how much days you were in the same year. If you've been in Israel more than 183 days, which is basically half of the year. A year, yes. Mm-hmm. If, for example, in this year, 2023, you are in Israel more than 183 days, which is exactly half of the year. If you'll be more than half of the year in Israel, you're considered as an Israeli tax resident. It's not something that you cannot do anything against it, but you basically considered as an Israeli resident. And another test, if you've been in Israel more than 30 days, 30, and in total of 3 days, more than 425 days in total, for example, in 2021, you've been here 200 days. 2022, you've been here another 200 days. And this year, 2023, only 30 days. You only 30 days in Israel, 30 days in Israel. However, in the last 3 years, you've been more than 425, 200 plus 200 plus 30. Then again, you're basically considered as an Israeli tax resident.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks. And what do repatriates who come, who move to Israel have some tax reliefs or tax exemptions? I know that there's 10 years exempt and so on. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. This is there are great tax benefits for people who came to Israel. In Israel, we call them first-time Israeli tax resident or veteran return resident. Both are entitled to 10 years of total exemption from both tax and reporting on all of their non-Israeli sourced income. For example, if they receive a rental income from Russia or a dividend from a Russian company, this will be fully exempt. And because there are people who left Israel from Russia, I have many clients like that, living in Russia for many years, and they are coming back. I want to explain what is a veteran or return resident. It's someone that's been outside of Israel more than 10 years. If you've been outside of Israel for more than 10 years, when you come back, you too will be entitled for these 10 years of tax benefits.
All right. And do they need to file tax return during those first 10 years, or they need to do nothing?
You're fully exempt for both tax and reporting, meaning that you don't have to file taxes on your non-Israeli source income. However, if you need to file a tax return for other reason, for example, if you have a business in Israel, you have to file a tax return, but in this tax return, you will not include your non-Israeli income. You don't have even to tell about it. You just need to file about your Israeli income if you have. If you don't have any Israeli affairs, probably you don't have to file a tax return at all.
All right. And what happens after 10 years? So a repatriate came, lived for 10 years, and after that, what taxes they start paying on like regular income, on real estate, and so on, so on?
After that, you pay in Israel, say Israel tax resident, you pay your taxes on your worldwide income. Basically, you have to report and pay taxes. The taxes in Israel are basically on passive income, usually around 25%. Depends what is the income exactly. We can elaborate on that if you want. But basically on passive income, you pay 25% of most type of passive income. And on active income, you pay between 0% to 50%, depending on how much money do you make.
Interesting. And you said on worldwide incomes, right?
Yes, but of course, if you have a rental income from Russia, and for example, you have to pay in Israel, let's say 30% on that, but you already paid in Russia 20%, you pay in Israel only the difference. Of course,
only the difference.
Only the difference. When you pay in Israel only the 10%, partly because we have a tax treaty between Israel and Russia, and also according to the Israeli tax laws, you don't have to pay the whole amount again. You get a tax credit for what you paid outside of Israel.
You mean the double treaty agreement, right?
Yes, the tax treaty. Yeah.
Tax treaty. Okay. And by the way, do you have the same with the US? I guess you have, but
yeah.
So, and it works similarly, right?
Yes.
So whatever you
exactly.
paid in the US, you credit to whatever you have to pay in Israel.
Yes, this is exactly correct. I just want to emphasize something that is very important, that many people usually miss when they think about the Israeli tax benefit and about the treaty. And this thing is the source or the origin of the income, and I'll explain. For example, if you're working from Israel and you are an employee of a Russian company and you're getting your salary from a US company or a Russian company, it's not considered as a Russian income. It's considered as an Israeli sourced income. And therefore, you have to pay and you have to file taxes and pay in Israel, and you won't get any credit for this income because it's not regarded as a Russian or US income. However, if you received from this company a dividend or a rental income or interest income, for example, all these tax incomes are considered as a non-Israeli sourced income and you're exempt. But for example, if you have a business or you're working as an employee of a non-Israeli company, it's regarded as an Israeli sourced income and you have to file and pay taxes and you won't get any credit. And many people fall on this point.
And same, I guess, applies to people who do freelancing, who work online, and even if they serve Russian clients, but they are tax residents in Israel, they're like obliged to pay Israel tax, right?
Exactly. If, for example, you are a freelancer and then you lived in Russia for many years, then you come to Israel, you continue your business, it's considered a business income, which is source of income is from Israel, and you have to file taxes and pay everything here in Israel, yes.
All right. And Many Russians who moved to Israel, including some friends of mine, they still have some assets in Russia. Some try to sell them as soon as possible. Some like postpone this process. What will happen if, for example, they sell real estate? For example, they spent $100,000, they sold it for 150. What will happen during first 10 years and after 10 years, if they got this income, what will happen?
Okay, so in the first 10 years, you're totally exempt.
Yeah.
I mean, you're totally exempt, you don't have to pay anything. After 10 years, you are partly exempt. And I'll explain. For example, if you hold the assets for, let's say, 20 years, okay, you take all the amount of time you were in Russia, this is exempt. You take all the 10 years, this is exempt, and the part that you have to pay taxes on is the part of the time after the 10 years. So for example, if you're born 4 years in Russia, 10 years in exemption, and 6 years hold it in Israel, 6 divided by 20, this will be the part that you have to pay tax on.
All right. And maybe similar question, what about the capital which people transfer from Russia to Israel? Any tax implications on that? For example, I have $1 million, I moved to Israel, I want this capital to move together with me. It was earned in Russia. So what will happen to that?
Basically, there is no problem regarding taxation in this point. You don't have to pay any tax on transferring the money. Your main problem would be to get the money inside an Israeli bank. You probably need both an approval or a letter from an Israeli accountant, for example, from a person like me. And most of the bank will also want a confirmation from a Russian accountant to know that all the taxes and everything was paid on this income.
And will Israeli tax authorities ask for some proof for this capital, where it's made from and so on?
Not the Israeli tax authorities, but the banks, yes. The banks in Israel are very, very hard with respect to getting money from the side of Israel. And you have to show them proof that, for example, how did you make this money? Did you pay taxes on it, etc.
All right. And does the taxation change if, for example, I became Israeli citizen and then I moved to another country and I worked there for more than 183 days? Anything changes for me because I become a tax resident for another country, most likely?
Yes, basically in Israel we have, for example, we have an exit tax. So sometimes if you stop being an Israeli tax resident, you have to pay some exit tax. And again, if you're not an Israeli tax resident, then some of your income became exempt. I mean, your non-Israeli source income is now exempt from tax and reporting in Israel.
All right. And any tax on capital gain, which is realized or unrealized? For example, you bought some stocks, they moved up, but you first case you sold them, second case you didn't sell them.
So basically in Israel, if it's an unrealized, you don't have to pay anything on that. You pay only on realized gains. Usually the tax will be usually 25% on the capital gain. On the real capital gain, it's important to understand that, for example, if you buy it in rubles or in USD, we calculate the tax according to shekels. Then maybe if the exchange rates are changing, you pay only on the tax in Israeli shekels, on the real gain in Israeli shekels, and not on the amount that will change according to the inflation or the change in the exchange rate. And once again, if you are not an Israeli tax resident, or if you are a first-time Israeli resident and you have these 10 years of exemption, you won't pay taxes on non-Israeli securities in most of the cases.
All right, it's clear. What taxes repatriants pay on properties, on real estate bought already in Israel? Any taxes on that side?
Yes, in Israel, you have to know that there's a big difference between commercial real estate and residential real estate. For residential real estate, there are some tax benefits. For example, if you have rental income from less than 5,700 shekels, it usually will be fully exempt. If you have higher income, you usually be entitled to pay just a flat 10%. There is a 10% tax regime for residential. For commercial, you pay according to your marginal rate, which for most of the people are starting from 31% and up to 50. If you are old and above 60, you can start, and you don't have too much income, it can start from 10% on your rental income.
All right. And now we're coming to stocks. And here I see different cases. For example, people get dividends or coupon income, or they sell shares. They sell Israeli shares. They sell Russian shares, or they get dividends from Russian stocks, or they sell American stocks, for example, ETFs, or get dividends from them. Any differences on those three cases? And what are tax rates here?
Okay, so basically, once again, if you're in a special tax regime of 10 years, you don't have to pay any taxes. Bond of the coupons, the interest, the dividends from non-Israeli securities, you're fully exempt. Let's say you're a regular Israeli tax resident, meaning you pay taxes on everything. On your interest and your dividends, you will pay 25%. Okay.
My question was, does it matter if you came to Israel and you had some stocks before, or you came to Israel and you bought them when you already were in Israel?
Okay.
Any difference here?
Okay, this is basically a great question, which I also teach my students in the university. If you're a first-time Israeli tax resident, there is no difference. I mean, if you're a first-time Israeli tax resident, you can come to Israel, and while you're in Israel already 5, 6, 7 years, buy a non-Israeli security, and you will be again exempt from the income from this security. However, if you're a regular, not veteran tax resident, the exemption is only from the asset you bought the time you were outside of Israel. But if you're talking about most of the clients that are probably hearing our call, probably they are now in Russia, they're thinking about moving to Israel, they will be entitled for exemption even if they will buy the security after they are in Israel.
All right. And any tax benefits for investors in stocks? For example, in Russia, if you invest in stocks, you can get some tax relief, tax exemptions, and so on, so on, so on. Besides this 10-year period, do you have anything? Like, for example, if you invest in Israeli and like stocks, you get this, and so on.
Basically, you don't have a special thing. If you invest in startups, startup company, there are what we call in Israel the angels law, which can give a quite good tax benefit, but not too people use this law because it's quite hard to get inside all the conditions in this law. So basically, I can say that there are not too many benefits for investing in stocks in Israel. Not too many.
Anything on cryptocurrencies? How they are taxed for repatriates? Or similar approaches like first 10 years and then
I mean, when thinking about cryptocurrencies, it's quite a bit more problematic or maybe interesting if you want to think about the positive thing in life. And the reason is it's hard to say whether it's in Israeli assets or non-Israeli assets. I mean, for example, if you buy a share, if you buy an, I don't know, Microsoft share, it's quite clear that you buy it in the Nasdaq, it's not an Israeli asset. If you buy a share of an Israeli company from the Israeli stock exchange, it's quite clear this is an Israeli asset. But for cryptocurrency, it's basically a code, which is how to say whether it's in Israel or outside of Israel, and this will make the things a bit more complex. I usually advise for my clients in these situations a few guidelines. The guidelines are usually, first of all, have the crypto in a non-Israeli stock exchange, non-Israeli crypto stock exchange. Usually, this is already the case. Another thing, if you came in and out in Israel many times during the year, it will be smarter to make the sales while you are outside of Israel. All these things will help you to convince, first of all, your accountant, but afterwards the ITA, these tax authorities, that basically this is not an Israeli asset, and therefore it's included in the 10 years of exemption.
All right, it's clear. We talked about stocks, we talked about real estate a little bit, and can you share some information about starting business by repatriates who came to Israel and decided to start some small business?
Yeah, sure, of course. In Israel, basically, if you open a business, you have basically 3 tax authorities that you have to deal with. First of all is the VAT, the VAT, value-added tax, which is in Israel 17%. You have to register and basically report and pay once in 1 month or 2 months. 2 months for small businesses, 1 month for bigger businesses. Another tax authority is what we call in Israel מתוך, which is basically social securities for many countries. You also pay for that in Israel. You also have to register and pay every month. And the last authorities is, of course, the tax income, the income tax, which you have to report and file your taxes once a year, and to have some kind of reportment and pay repayments during the year, and so on.
All right. And working with
but maybe just before we continue, I would say that it's quite hard in Israel to have a business without an accountant near you. I mean, 99% of the people who have a business in Israel have an accountant that help them and first of all open the tax files with all the authorities and make the reports for them, and etc.
Because it's pretty complicated for them to work without an accountant, right?
Yes, even if they are Israeli. Even if they are Israeli, 99% of Israelis have an accountant.
Interesting. And working with repatriates, especially with Russian repatriates, what typical tax mistakes you see over and over again? Maybe two or three of them. Not to list.
Okay, so the most thing that I say, first of all, is something that I touched before, is to being in Israel and receiving a salary from a non-Israeli company. This is basically a tax disaster, or to take fees by invoicing from Israel and not to understand that you cannot use your non-Israeli business. I mean, if you sit in Israel and to want to invoice someone, it's basically better to do it with an Israeli business, not to use your non-Israeli business for invoicing. It's again quite a big tax accident. And the last thing, which is not a mistake, but something that we have to be very cautious about it, and to make sure we don't make big mistakes in these kind of circumstances, is for people that have family in Israel, close family, I mean, wife and children, and they're saying that they are not an Israeli tax resident. The ITA, the Israeli tax authorities, are not liking this position at all. They want to make that every person who has a wife in Israel will also be regarded as an Israeli tax resident. Right now, this is not the law. The law in Israel enable you to have separate residency. I mean, you can have your wife an Israeli tax resident and you, for example, non-Israeli tax resident. The
Mhm.
ITA want to change that in the law, but even now, which is okay by the law, they are very hard in this kind of positions. And if you want to say that your wife is an Israeli tax resident and you are not, you have to be very, very strong in your center of life test to show how all the other elements of your center of life are outside of Israel.
All right. And how generally repatriates pay taxes technically? For example, they understand that they have to pay it, but they are new to this country. They don't understand some details and how things work, mechanics, and so on. Can you, like, in 2 words, what they should do to go download some phone app, website, and so on? What
No,
should they do?
basically, the best thing they can do in Israel is basically to get a good consultant, to go and consult and get a good consultant, not trying to do it by themselves. It's not like in the US where most people make their taxes alone. It's not working like that in Israel. In Israel, it's quite complex. And even people that are Israeli and are very good with the language and know the mentality can make disastrous and very big mistakes. And people who came from Russia or any other place in the world to Israel and want to file their taxes and do it correctly, they will save time and money if they go to a good accountant or tax lawyer, which can help them doing so. They will save time, they will save money, and they will save big mistakes.
All right. And in which cases the tax agent report incomes, like employer, maybe a broker, maybe a bank, and in which cases you should file the report by yourself?
Basically, if all your income in Israel are from agents who pay your taxes, and your income is not higher than approximately 650,000 shekels a year, which is a bit more than 50,000 shekels a month. If all your income are from employees or Israeli brokers or Israeli banks, which pay your taxes and withdraw your taxes and get it to the government, usually you don't have to file taxes in Israel at all. However, if you have rental income, which is not exempt, it is above about 5,500 shekels, or you have a business income, or you have an income from non-Israeli broker, which is not exempt, because again, if it's exempt, you don't have to file on that. If you have any type of income where they didn't take all your taxes, they didn't withdraw all your taxes, you have to file and pay your taxes by yourself.
Okay. And what are the penalties for violating tax laws in Israel? Are they like super strict?
Well, basically in Israel, on one hand, they are not too strict, meaning that we're not in the US. You won't go to jail on any small things. In the US, I don't know if you're familiar, but basically on very, very small things, you can go find yourself in jail. In Israel, you won't go to jail so quickly. However, you get fines, you get problems in your bank, and if it's something important that you did, then yes, there are criminal charges and people do go to jail for some tax offenses. But let's say for the small things, for example, if you're late when you're filing, etc., you basically just get fines.
Okay, Ariel, what is your final message to people who became repatriates in Israel, especially to Russian repatriates?
So my message would be, don't be afraid. I mean, don't be afraid from the Israeli tax authority. Even if you don't know the language, if you don't know how to deal with them, there's a tax authority. You should not be afraid of it. They give you quite a good benefits. And if you go to a good consultant, an accountant, or tax lawyer, you'll probably be in a good position and you can really enjoy all your tax benefits and don't need to be scared or afraid of anything.
All right, thank you. And actually, those 10 years which we talked about is a great example for other countries to welcome repatriates to their own countries. This is amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Good
I
job.
agree.
Good job, guys. All right. So I asked all my questions, Ariel. It was super interesting and informative interview. So thanks for your time. And I will leave your contact information about you and your firm in the description of this video. Thanks again for coming, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this interview. It was very good. Thank you.
All right. Bye.